Welcome back this evening. It's late enough that the world has gone quiet again. That soft kind of silence that comes after the rain has been falling for hours. Everything outside feels washed clean, blurred at the edges, like a memory that's been handled too many times. If there's still noise in your head, let it slow down now. You're here, and that's enough. Tonight's story is called The Town That Slept Through the Rain. It's about a place that never quite dries, where the clouds drift low and the streets seem to hum with quiet dreams. People there move softly, as if afraid to wake the puddles. Even the lamps burn a little slower, their light bending through the mist. It's not a sad place, just one that's learned how to rest while the world keeps turning. So find your stillness. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the steady patter of rain. Let go of the thoughts that try to pull you somewhere else. Tonight, you're walking through quiet streets where nothing is expected of you. Just listen and drift. The rain had been falling since before I arrived. Not hard, not cold, just steady, the kind that fills every silence until even your own footsteps seem unsure of themselves. The road into town was narrow and glistening, bordered by low stone walls that leaned inward as though they'd been listening to the same rain for too many years. My coat was damp by the time I reached the first street lamp, its light flickering through the mist like a heartbeat trying to remember its rhythm. Everything beyond that glow was gray, but not empty, just soft, as if the world had forgotten how to wake up. The town was smaller than I expected. A few rows of houses, shutters drawn, their roofs sloped low under the weight of water. There was a bakery on the corner, its windows fogged from the inside, and a clock tower that hadn't struck in years. Somewhere, I thought I heard music, not a song really, just a few slow notes that floated on the air and disappeared into the rain. I wasn't sure if they were coming from a window or my own imagination. I kept walking, drawn deeper into the quiet. The cobblestones beneath my shoes were slick, but each one seemed to hold a faint reflection of light, fragments of the sky scattered across the ground. Every now and then, I passed a lamppost, its glass dripping, its glow warm and soft like candlelight through old paper. The rain didn't hide the world here. It revealed it, slowly, carefully, one shimmering surface at a time. At the edge of the square, I found a bench beneath an awning. The sound of the rain was louder here, pooling in gutters, sliding off rooftops, whispering against everything it touched. I sat for a while, watching the puddles gather and ripple. Each ripple seemed to move at its own pace, like time itself was uncertain how quickly to pass. I didn't mind. It felt right to wait for a moment that didn't need to arrive. After a while, I noticed that the rain never really stopped. It just changed its mind about how it wanted to fall. Sometimes it drifted like mist, soft enough to feel like breath against the skin. Other times it thickened, pulling threads of silver light through the air, connecting the rooftops to the sky. The sound of it filled every space, but somehow never felt loud. Even silence had a rhythm here. Across the square, a small cafe glowed behind fogged glass. The sign above the door had faded until only the outline of its letters remained, like a word the town had forgotten how to say. I crossed the street, the puddles rippling beneath each step, and pushed the door open. A bell chimed somewhere deep inside, its sound stretched thin by time. The air was warm and smelled faintly of tea, wood smoke, and something sweet I couldn't place. An older man stood behind the counter, polishing a cup that already shone. He looked up, nodded once, and said nothing. There was no need for words. He poured a cup of something pale and steaming and set it in front of me without asking what I wanted. I took a sip. It tasted like warmth itself. Not spice, not sugar, just the quiet satisfaction of being indoors while rain traced every window. I asked how long the rain had been falling. He smiled faintly, his reflection warping in the cup he still held. "As long as anyone can remember," he said, his voice carrying the softness of someone who'd stopped needing answers. "Does it ever stop?" I asked. He thought about it, glanced at the window and shrugged. "Maybe it just moves slower sometimes." I stayed there until the cup was empty. When I finally stepped outside again, the rain greeted me like an old friend. The streets glowed faintly, every puddle holding the reflection of some unseen light. The air was softer now, and I realized the rain didn't make the town lonely. It made it gentle. The rain had changed again by the time I reached the edge of the square. It fell in smaller drops now, almost hesitant, as if it didn't want to wake anyone. The lamps along the street burned low, halos of gold suspended in a gray hush. I walked without direction, just following where the reflections seemed brightest. Each window I passed revealed a quiet world of its own. Soft light, slow movement, a life still turning beneath the rhythm of the rain. There was a tailor's shop with a single candle burning in the back. Spools of thread lined the walls like tiny constellations, their colors muted but alive. In one window, a black umbrella leaned against a chair, its fabric glistening with droplets that never quite dried. It was strange how every object here seemed to hold the rain differently, as if the weather had left its own signature on everything it touched. I wondered if the people had learned to do the same. I came across a narrow alley that sloped downward toward a stream. The water moved slowly, gathering what the town no longer needed: stray petals, bits of leaves, the quiet reflections of windows. The stream ran so smoothly, it seemed to pull the world along with it. I followed it until the path widened again, opening into a small bridge draped in ivy. Standing there, I could see the entire town. Rooftops shimmering under the mist, the faint outline of the clock tower dissolving into the clouds. For a long time, I stayed still. The rain had found its balance, no heavier, no lighter, just steady enough to remind me I was inside the moment and nowhere else. It felt like the town wasn't waiting for anything. It simply existed, content in its rhythm. And for the first time in a long while, I realized I felt the same. From the bridge, I watched the rain gather in the stream below. It moved like a thought that had forgotten where it began. Tiny ripples caught the glow of the street lamps, turning the water into slow-moving glass. Now and then, a drop fell from the ivy above, sending rings across the surface that drifted outward until they vanished into the dark. Everything here seemed to know how to end gently. I continued down the road that wound away from the square. The houses grew smaller, closer together, their chimneys exhaling faint curls of steam. The rain softened against the rooftops, a whisper rather than a sound. I passed a window where an old radio played something slow and distant, the kind of melody that could have been written by the weather itself. It was easy to imagine the whole town sleeping to that song, letting it carry them through the night. Further ahead, I found a lantern hanging from a crooked post. Its glass was cracked, but the flame inside burned steady and gold. I reached out to shield it from the rain, though it didn't seem to need my help. The light flickered once, then steadied again, reflecting in the puddles at my feet. For some reason, that tiny persistence felt like the truest thing I'd seen all evening. There was no sound now except the rain and the soft hiss of the lantern's flame. The air smelled faintly of iron and wet stone. I stood there a while, feeling the warmth of the light against the cool mist. Time moved differently here, not forward or backward, just outward, like ripples spreading through a puddle that would never quite dry. The longer I stayed, the more it felt like I was becoming part of the weather itself. I left the lantern behind and followed the road as it curved uphill. The rain thickened again, soft sheets of silver tumbling through the lamplight. Each drop shimmered for a moment before joining the rest, 1,000 tiny stories dissolving into one. The rooftops below blurred into a wash of gray and gold, like brushstrokes on a half-finished painting. Everything looked both unfinished and complete, exactly as it needed to be. Halfway up the hill, I came across a narrow gate. It creaked softly when I opened it, revealing a path lined with overgrown ivy and stone steps slick with rain. At the top stood an old clock tower, the same one I'd seen from the square. Up close, it didn't seem broken, just tired. Its hands were frozen somewhere between hours, pointing not at time, but at stillness. I stood beneath it, listening. The rain tapped gently against the wood, a quiet percussion that filled the empty space where the chime should have been. Each drop echoed faintly through the hollow inside, turning the silence into a kind of music. It felt right, that a place like this would measure time not in minutes or hours, but in rainfall. Each storm was a story, and the town had lived through more than it could count. I leaned against the tower's wall, watching the mist roll down the hill. It gathered in the streets below, curling around doorways and chimneys, swallowing every sharp edge. I could almost see the town breathing, its rhythm slow and content. Even the rain seemed to follow its lead, softening until it was barely there at all. The world below shimmered, half asleep, half remembered. In that moment, I understood why no one here hurried. There was no need. The rain would always come back, the lights would always glow, and the streets would always remember how to listen. All anyone had to do was stand still long enough to hear the rhythm beneath the quiet. And so I did. Eventually, I began to make my way back down the hill. The rain had thinned to a light mist, more a memory than weather. The cobblestones gleamed under the lanterns, their glow now soft enough to feel like it belonged to the rain itself. Every window shimmered faintly, each one holding its own quiet story, a shadow passing, a flicker of warmth, a small proof of life. The town didn't sleep to escape the rain. It slept to listen to it better. As I crossed the bridge again, the stream below reflected the faint light of dawn. The sky hadn't yet decided what color to be. A soft blue-gray stretched across the horizon, mixing with gold in places where the clouds had grown thin. The rain, still steady, seemed almost protective now, like a curtain keeping the morning from rushing in too soon. The world was still half dreaming, and I didn't want to wake it. I passed the cafe again, its windows still fogged, a dim glow flickering somewhere inside. The same man was there, wiping the counter just as before. He glanced up, nodded once, and said nothing, as if no time had passed at all. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe the town simply looped through the same gentle hour, forever drifting between rain and silence. When I reached the edge of town, the last lamp flickered out behind me. The sound of the rain faded into a steady hum, not ending, just becoming part of everything else. The path ahead was washed clean, the air cool and new. And for a moment, I felt as though I had been built from the same stillness that lived here. A body made of rain, finally at rest. So here's where the story ends. The rain still falls somewhere in the distance, soft, steady, unbothered by time. You've walked its quiet streets, felt its calm rhythm, and carried a little of its peace with you. Now, there's nothing left to do but rest. Let your thoughts drift the way the raindrops do, unhurried, unimportant, slipping easily from one to the next. The world will wait. For now, you can let everything fade into the hush of the night. Breathe slow. Settle deeper into stillness. Sleep comes quietly, the same way the rain begins, unnoticed at first until it's everywhere. Let it find you now. Let the story dissolve into rest at the sound of it trailing off like distant thunder on the edge of memory. And when you wake again, the calm will still be waiting. Good night.